on. Don't fail me, hearts.
Yes.
That's for YouTube viewers only. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Off to Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, we're talking about The Outsiders, a new musical. This is long overdue. We are well aware that this show is like so popular and has been so popular for months. I've seen it twice by the time we're recording this. So we know that we're late, but we think that the party is still happening. And
It's still happening for sure.
Absolutely need to talk about this show. Yeah, we saw this back in October. If you listen back to our New York recap, we talked about a rush process for this show. Oh, I'm so curious to know what's happening. We are not like up on the rush game as we were when we went there.
I think we might be jumping back in, but
we might be jumping back in. But I wonder if it's as crazy as it has been for the last
it's cold right now.
Back half of the year. Yeah, I know it is cold right now.
It's cold right now, and this is like a deader time, January to March when we're recording. So who knows? It probably still is. But maybe not as crazy as it was. It was okay the day we went, I think. Not insane.
I agree. But you know what else is coming up? Contracts will be ending soon for this. So
true.
I feel like there's probably a new cast about to happen in the next month or so. Or I don't know, maybe some of these people will stay on for a bit longer. But always exciting when there's like a cast change. And we know now that The Outsiders will be going on tour. So it's a show that obviously won Best Musical at the 2024 Tony Awards, and it is still such a hot ticket on Broadway. Oh my God, should we... Actually, it's totally irrelevant. I was like, should we pull up the grosses? But it's for the week of January, so actually, we're not going to do that. We're pre-recording this episode, so we're actually not going to do that, but I know that The Outsiders is still doing very well.
It's not in danger yet.
No, not yet.
It's still okay.
Should I give a synopsis?
Yes, please. Tara, give us a synopsis of The Outsiders.
Okay, so this is just going to be the musical, but obviously we know that this is based on a book and then based on a movie and now the musical.
Should I do the timeline? I actually have the timeline for this.
Okay, do the timeline first and then I'll do the synopsis.
Yeah. So 1967, it was a novel written by S.E. Hinton. She was 18 years old when the book was published and wrote it as she was 15 and 16 years old. And it was based on what she was seeing in her hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma. 1983.
1967.
In 1983, there was a movie directed by Francis Ford Coppola starring Ralph Macchio.
A good cast.
No, it is a good cast. Rob Lowe, Patrick Swayze, Matt Dillon, fun people.
Tom Cruise, I think, is in this too.
Tom Cruise, before he fixed his teeth. And then in 2023, there was a San Diego La Jolla Playhouse out-of-town tryout for this production of the musical that we're talking about today. And then it opened in 2024, spring of 2024, and went on to win Best Musical Tony at the 2024 Tony Awards.
Yes. So for anybody that doesn't know, The Outsiders, the musical, which I mean the movie too, the book, it's all kind of the same. It's told from the perspective of Ponyboy Curtis, who is 14, I believe, which is funny when you think about when you actually place people to age number. Comedy sometimes, but it's all through his perspective. So he's kind of telling this story again, as Steph said, set in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1967, and it is basically in a roundabout way about the rival between the Socs, who are kind of the upper class, and the Greasers, who are the lower class, and that's kind of the entire premise. And we see what ensues between the Socs and the Greasers all the way through. We follow Ponyboy and his family and his friends, and there's a big fight that happens, but it's kind of just almost a spotlight in this small time period of these two gangs, I think. I don't know that there's anything really more than that. It's kind of nothing but also a lot at the same time.
You meet Ponyboy and his brothers, the Curtis family, after their parents have died, and that's kind of changed their lives, and so many of the decisions that they made and what happens to them is because they don't have that family support system and that family at home.
And for anybody, and for anybody listening who was oh, Ponyboy can't be his real name, it is. And Soda can't be his real name. So we have like these two random character names, and like the rest of this cast of characters has like regular names. Like their other brother's name is Daryl. So
you have to remember this was written by a 15. Teenager.
I know.
This was written by a teenager.
It's true. So before we get into this, we're going to do what we always do, which is talk about our relationship to The Outsiders. I'll start because I have no relationship to The Outsiders. I've never read the book. I've only seen like parts of the movie, but like enough to know like the full gist. I've seen like the Rumble scene. I've seen when Bob, is that his name, dies. When Johnny kills Bob, I believe that's his name. It's like Sherry's boyfriend.
It's Bob, yeah.
And I've seen the end, which I feel like I've seen like the 3 pivotal like violent moments, and the rest I can understand what's going on here. And then I saw The Outsiders in April of 2024, right at like the Tony cutoff weekend. And then we saw it again in October. Both of those were rush tickets. The first time I saw it, we were in like the second last row of the orchestra, which was the upper tiered rush for $79. Then they kind of took that away by the time that we went for rush, the tiered pricing at least. And then we saw it for standing room in October, which was $45, I believe.
I have my ticket right here. It was $45.
And both times, like, we've talked about this again previously, but, like, good view, both of those times.
I was really
if standing room is the only way that you can see it, you're still going to get a really good view of that show.
I think there's a couple rush options. I think standing room is a better option than the obstructed side orchestra seats that are blocked by that giant tire for the most part. Yeah. Those front seats are very obstructed, which is why they're rush tickets. That's why they're inexpensive. And I would say our seats standing at the back of the orchestra were also a little bit obstructed, but in a much less impactful way. Like the top of the stage is obstructed a little bit. So you have to like lean down a little bit and move to see a few moments, but it's very, very few moments. It's not so pivotal that you're missing huge chunks of the show. Yeah. I didn't really feel like it impacted enjoyment in any way.
Okay, so your relationship to The Outsiders.
My relationship to The Outsiders, I, like many people, read the novel The Outsiders in 7th grade when I was 12 years old. And it was, for so many, I think that's like a pretty formative age to read a novel. And for so many people, like it just really imprinted. And then at that time, after you finish reading, you watch the movie.
Miss those days, honestly.
Miss those days. I do. I really do. Where the reward of reading a book is you get to watch the movie at the end. I honestly still sometimes use that reward system. Like I like in my own personal life. And that's kind of it. And then I also feel like it's just pervasive in the culture. Some of the lines like "Stay Gold," which is from a poem, or, "Do It for Johnny." There's like a poem that "Stay Gold" comes from that kind of has stayed in the culture as well. So I think so much of The Outsiders, even if you haven't seen it or know about it, like is pretty like common knowledge. I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. It's kind of like someone had a yearbook quote that was a quote from The Outsiders in whatever grade you graduated in. So like I agree, it kind of was always in like the public conversation. I don't know that I ever thought that it would be turned into a musical.
No, me neither.
Me
neither.
And we'll get into that. But before we actually like talk about the show, I do want to talk about kind of the phenomenon of it all that's been going on, because I think it's been kind of a long time since we've seen something take off the way that this has taken off. We talk a lot on this podcast about like, marketing your show and sometimes like putting money into something to get like that big social media reaction. And not to say that this show didn't do that, but they didn't really do that. It was more of the like young girl word of mouth that did that for the marketing teams.
This is like a grassroots operation. It's word of mouth.
I just don't think we've seen something like this happen in a long time. And I know the first time I saw it, in my head I was like, oh, this is the new Newsies, the way that people are reacting to this.
I agree.
We love a boys and musicals show, and that is like proven time and time again. And when this show came out and it got good word of mouth reviews, every young girl and their mother ended up going to the rush line of the Outsiders. And it's not like they're only going once. They are returning. There are repeat offenders, me included, going to the Outsiders. But like, I'm talking like 5, 10, 15, 20 times returning. When I was in the rush line, because we split for this, there was there was a mother and a daughter who had seen the Outsiders like last night, and then we're right back in the rush line at like 7:30 to go see the matinee before they got on their train to go home at like 7 p.m. So like, and I believe the girl was like 12 or 13. That's really like the prime, I feel like.
No, absolutely.
age.
That's the age that I read the novel and watched the movie. Like, I do feel like, especially because these characters are so young, I do feel like that is the prime age.
But then even to the point that like, we haven't seen stage door experiences like this since like pre-COVID. So it's really interesting to see a show like this take off in such a huge way without like a huge marketing team behind it. I've never seen a word of mouth happen this quickly for a show like this.
Yeah, I do wonder what it is about this. I think there's part of it is the cast. Like, I do feel like the cast has been on social media and engaging in fan interactions with them on social media. I think the cast is quite young, and getting all their energy together is really fun. I think the fact that it's like a bunch of handsome boys who hang out the window of the theater like doesn't hurt, you know.
100%.
I was never, let's say, like a Newsies girl in that way, so I don't know if I like identify with with the fandom, but I agree that it is very similar to the way people obsessed over the cast of Newsies and had favorites and wrote letters and made video edits of them, and I don't know, just kind of were obsessed. And I do think, speaking of that repeat viewing, I think to be a truly successful show, you have to be something that people want to watch over and over and over again. If you're something that is one and done, you're never going to be, not never, but be, you know, as long running as you are with something that people keep coming back over and over and over again.
Yeah. It's very interesting because, again, I don't think we've seen something like this happen in at least like 5 years, because I feel like the pandemic really like took a chunk of that time out. When we left the theater, we didn't have that much time to stay because we had to run to O'Mary. Yeah. But like the crowds at the stage door were wild. Like, I have not seen stuff like that since I was like in line to get an autograph from Nick Jonas for How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. Like, it's been a long time. And all that to say, like, I know there's been a lot of issues with stage dooring in the last like few months or so. So people need to still be respectful because these actors do not owe anybody anything. But it is like kind of exciting to see like the non-theater fan come in and be obsessed with a show. I feel like it's been a long time since I've seen people be so excited about something, and that's exciting to me.
Yes, 100%. Something I think about often, and something I think I say all the time, is if you can get your target audience to be teenage girls, you are set. Like, you are set. They are, teenage girls to me are tastemakers. And like, I in some ways consider myself a teenage girl, but let's classify it as like
teenage girl.
31-year-old teenage girl. Let's like make it broader. Young women, 100%. I think are to me tastemakers. They are putting dollars behind what they want, buying merchandise, buying tickets, being loyal fans of so many things. And so if you can get the corner of that market, you have a hit on your hands. And The Outsiders has done that insanely well.
That's the thing too. Like,
something created by a teenage girl and then has, you know, cornered the teenage girl, young women market.
And it is true because like even in that rush line, like I was maybe one of the only people that didn't have Outsiders merch. Like everybody had a tote bag.
Or everybody a mother with you. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, or a mother. But everyone had a tote bag. Everyone had a button. Everybody had, they were doing friendship bracelets at one point. Like it was, and then they started to do collabs. Emma Pittman did vlogs for Broadway.com, and now she's done her own vlogs, but they did like a Moleskine collab. They've been on like the cover of magazines. They have like only recently now sent them out to do like TV interviews. They've obviously performed on like the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade.
Shows.
Like it's very yeah, they're one of the only shows that's doing late night show performances. So I do think they've like really at this point now like realized what they have with this, and it's gonna help them when it goes on tour for sure as well. So let's talk about Outsiders the musical. Again, as I said at the beginning, I don't know that I would ever turn this into a musical. However, I do think that the one thing that probably sold the creative team in turning this into a musical was we got to put that rumble on stage. And I think that they thought of that and then they built everything else around it.
I mean, rumbles have been being staged and choreographed for years. Like the most famous rumble is West Side Story, obviously. And everyone thinks they've got a new take. Everyone tries to come up with, something new to stage that rumble. And for some reason, not for some reason, but gang on gang violence of like young men is so compelling as a storytelling tool, as a metaphor, and kind of using, and like the rumble as kind of the symbol for this, war between these two factions. It's an amazing climax of a show. It's always going to hit that height. So yeah, I think, you get excited by the rumble. And then you're like, okay, what else can we musicalize? What else sings here?
I mean, let's talk about the music right off the top here, because I do think that the music is maybe the weakest part of this show.
This music is fine to me. Like when we went to New York, we went in October, and I saw the show and I was like, I had a good time. I enjoyed it. But I had zero inclination to go and click play on that cast album. Like, I never did it until this week when I was like, gotta refresh. I had zero inclination to re-listen to it again. It served the purpose in the show. It sounded nice, but I wasn't like called to listen to it again.
I think I agree. I did listen to it more, I think, than you did. This was back in April. It's been a while since I've listened to it. I was listening to it like right before we came on here. I was like, oh, I like this song. Oh, I like this song.
Yeah.
I think everything is like nice sounding for sure. I think the problem is there's so much storytelling that happens in these songs that it's hard to almost just like, you can pick them out because it's not a sung through musical, but it's like, oh, we're actually trying to get like full text of script out in a musical number here, which works sometimes but doesn't always work, especially when you're still doing like scenes.
It's hard. So I do like that, because some musicals fall in the trap of being a musical and yet the songs don't move the plot forward. Like these songs are moving the plot forward.
Almost too much.
Like so much. But it's a lot of like, and then I felt like this, and then she did this.
Yes.
It's like very like literal, and maybe I want a little more symbolism. And they do that symbolism really well in other aspects of the show, but not in the lyrics of the show. I think the sound of the music, like lyrics aside, fits really well with like that Tulsa, Oklahoma 60s. There's almost like a little bit of rockabilly, a little bit of country, blues, like it's all mixed in together. I think that suits it really well, but some of the music, like lyrics wise, like drags a bit. I don't know.
This is Jonathan Clay and Zach Chance, who are Jamestown Revival. So they're, I believe,
plus
like
Justin Levine.
Yes, I believe they're like a bluegrass country rock-ish band. I'm not familiar with them. Never heard
I've never
anything
heard them before.
from them other than this. But I agree, the sound definitely works, but yes, sometimes the lyrics feel like a little heavy-handed in terms of like, again, we're telling so much story here, but it's also all from like the character's perspective instead of like, it's not internal, it's like external thoughts that they're singing.
Plus you have him kind of narrating to the audience
at the same time.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
At the same time. So he'll speak and then he'll sing. And you're like really like doing exposition, like here's how I'm feeling, here's what's happening, here's this. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Text. Because again, if you're basing it on the novel, like again, it is a first person novel. He is telling it from his perspective. And whenever you try to adapt something in a book that's first person to a visual medium, it's hard to get into someone's mind without doing that voiceover. It's hard to represent someone's thoughts without using that particular tool. But that particular tool looks very corny often.
Right. I'm also, again, didn't read the book, and I know it's been a long time since you read the book, but I don't know how loyal they are to this story. I would assume they're decently loyal to
I feel like it's fairly loyal. I was watching the Google talk with them, with some of the cast earlier today, and something I didn't realize or remember is the character of Cherry in the musical is a combination of Cherry and this other character, Randy. But I do think it's fairly loyal. There is one kind of large thing that is changed, and I think we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's a fairly loyal adaptation.
Yeah. We did see an understudy for Ponyboy. We saw Josh Strobel on for Brody Grant, who we learned later was like in Japan for weeks. On vacation. And that's
we never saw Trevi Fountain. We never saw Trevi
Fountain. But that is something too that I will say about this fan base is that like not only are they loyal to the OG cast, they are so loyal to the understudies. Everybody is dying to see every understudy go on as every single character, and I actually love that. That's like my favorite part of the fandom is how loyal they are to the understudies.
No, it is great. You got to collect them all. You got to see them all in all their parts. You have kind of a hit when, audience members want to see different interpretations of each role. Like, it's not so reliant on one person's performance of it, but they want to see everyone's, and I love that. Yeah,
it's so great. Something that I think we both really loved was the set in this show. They have that like rubbery gravel, which I was like, are we going to talk about the Rumble here? But maybe we'll save it for a bit. But when we do get to the Rumble, I think it actually helps the cast because the ground is rubber.
We have seen another Rumble in the rain before that I think ended up being a little more dangerous than this one.
But it's kind of like industrial with scaffolding almost looking on the stage. We've got cars on stage, we've got tires on stage, but then you also get that big moment of like the barn that's there. We have like the dinner table for the family. So it is like slightly simplistic, but also has a lot of like moving parts to it. Very industrial, very like grungy.
They're not doing major set changes. They're kind of just highlighting different moments of the set, different parts of the set, lighting them in different ways, or bringing on minimal pieces on and off.
Yeah. And then I believe we talked about this in a previous episode. Maybe it was our New York recap. Maybe it was like our year in review. But I actually think like the true kind of success to this musical is its direction. And that's Danya Taylor, who did win the Tony Award. Tamor. Julie Taymor's niece. How could I forget?
How could you forget?
She did win the Tony, which I think at the time was like kind of a
shocked
surprise.
Everyone. Shocked.
But then
everyone thought it was going to be Marianne Elliott.
100%. But then when you saw it, you were like, this direction is good.
Sorry, I lied. Everyone thought it was going to be Maria Friedman.
Sorry, Marianne Elliott is Company. Maria Friedman is Marilee.
A woman slaying a Sondheim revival, okay?
We're only speaking of women here, and we can't get one of their names right. So like...
No. I will equal opportunity confuse.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Danya
Maria
Taymor.
Danya Taymor.
No, I remember when we saw it, you were like, oh, this is good because it's so well directed.
You can see the direction. It has identity. I was watching that Google Talk today, and she said she had never seen the movie before taking this job. Like, she wasn't familiar with it at all. And she watched it kind of after they had done like workshops and stuff, because she didn't want to be influenced too much by it. The visuals of the movie didn't necessarily matter so much to this. But then she also said that they watched Rumblefish, which is another movie adaptation directed by Francis Ford Coppola of another of S.E. Hinton's novels. And they took a lot aesthetically from that more than the Outsiders movie. Which I was like, oh, cool, interesting. But yeah, she wasn't familiar so much with the text before she went in and started working on it. Yeah, I do really feel like she put the pieces together so well. Something that I've thought about this musical many times is I actually think the sum of its parts is greater than each of its parts individually. Like, if you put together all of the different factors of it, it would add up to one. But by putting them all together in the way that Danya Taymor has assembled these pieces, it elevates each individual part. And I think it's great. I think it's great because I'm like, I don't think the music is that great. I don't necessarily know if I love this book. I do love the choreography very much. Yeah. The ensemble's slaying, the dancing is great. But yeah, I think all of those things put together are elevated in a way that a director's vision is really strong here.
Yeah, I agree. I think also the lighting is super important to this show. All the way from the top, when Ponyboy sings Great Expectations and he's reading the book with a flashlight, and then we spotlight on each of the characters that he's talking about, the stage is dark. That's cool. Then we get to like all of these kind of like the first time that he's put his head in the tire, we are in like kind of darkness, and then we lights up out of it. I feel like, and I think I might have said this like way back in April, but there's so many like solo spotlight moments that kind of lead up to the Rumble, which has one of the best lighting I've ever seen in a show, maybe ever. And I think that they use their almost like sound effects in a great way as well. Like there's a lot going for the show that even if you took the songs out, I feel like it's pretty strong stagecraft wise, which I don't know that always happens with shows. I guess
well, if we could talk, sorry, not to say, but if we can talk about something like Suffs Across the Street, which we did not see, and I'm going to be speaking about what I've heard from other people, but saying that music is amazing, but that the production lets it down a little bit. And that's a disappointment when you see a show that is great, but it's not hitting its full potential in this production. Whereas I think this, like The Outsiders, is hitting like its full potential with this production.
Well, I think this is kind of where everything kind of came to head, was at the Tony Awards. If there was the like Suffs versus The Outsiders, they're also like across the street from each other, which is hilarious. Because Suffs has the book, has the music, has the ensemble, whatever. Outsiders has the ensemble, has the lighting, has the choreography, has the direction, has like the stagecraft. The songs may be a letdown, the book may be a letdown. The cast is still there, but today, I feel like you're looking for something that stands out. And again, haven't seen Subs. Hopefully we can watch that on PBS whenever that comes out. But I do agree with you that I think the like simplicity of it is kind of what let it down in a way. Because it's almost like a women versus men situation. I think a lot of people were like upset about it. But
people did read it like that. I don't necessarily read it like that, but it is hard when the subject matter of Suffs is about women's rights. Like, it's hard not to.
But I do think that, like, we do have to look at the full package here when you're looking at stuff that is nominated for Best New Musical.
And this is something that I want to discuss. And I don't know if there's a true answer to this. But when you are winning Best Original Musical, is the award for the production or is the award for the writing? And I know there are different awards for, like, Best Original Music or best book or, different elements of the production. But what is it for? Because when it's for Best Revival, it's for that production and not for the show. So when it's Best Original Musical, what exactly are we awarding here?
Wouldn't it be the same as Revival?
Yeah, I don't know. When I think about like Best Play, when Best Original Play wins, whoever wins Best Original Play, the playwright often speaks. And so I'm like, who are we awarding here?
Well, it's the producer that always talks when the best music.
The producer does speak. So yeah, I guess I want to know.
To me, it's the same as Best Picture at the Oscars.
Yeah, I guess I want to know like what the criteria is. Like, what are we supposed to be looking at for Best Original Musical?
Find that. I don't know if it actually exists, but I'm sure there's.
I don't know if there's like a specific rubric, but what are we?
Can look down. I do
something to think about.
But it is interesting because, as you said, like score is an award, book is an award, direction is an award. So I don't remember who spoke for The Outsiders, but I believe it was a producer when they won.
Was it Angelina Jolie? It wasn't.
No, it wasn't her. Or maybe it was Danya. It might have been Danya again.
She'd already spoken that night. Yeah, I don't remember who spoke either.
Yeah. No, but that is a good question. I can't answer it for you. So
no. I don't know. Like, what are we voting on? And maybe it's vibes based, which is fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are we awarding when we award Best Musical?
Yeah, that is interesting.
The production or the show as it will be hopefully produced 100 more times with different productions.
Yeah. Let's talk about the choreography. This is choreographed by the Cooperman brothers. Shout out
Rick
to
and
Canada.
Jeff. Shout out to Canada. Where are they from? Ottawa?
I don't know.
I don't know why. BC?
did this win?
I can find
I
this
don't
out.
even think it won.
No, because Illinois.
Oh, Illinois is right.
Won,
Justin Peck really stepped in there.
Also great. So Justin Peck won for Illinois.
I just remember when I first saw this, seeing the Rumble for the first time was like so crazy. I think that choreography is so genius because it looks like the actors are truly hurting themselves. I would love to see a fight call. Like, someone record the full fight call. Like, I would love to see it. But it's just, there's an amazing video. We've talked about it before. I will put it in the YouTube description.
Well, they're from Richmond Hill.
Oh my God, like, truly,
local
shout
hometown
out.
boys.
Shout out.
Shout out. They're like Toronto raised. I was like, shout out. I was like Ottawa, BC, Richmond Hill.
Shout out.
I could probably figure out what dance studio they went to. Give me 10 minutes. I'll figure out what dance studio they went to.
But there's an amazing video, we've spoken about it before, of it's Paul Wontorg speaking with them and Danya about the choreography of the Rumble specifically, and you see them in the rehearsal room, and something so interesting that I thought that they said, well, Paul said to them, and then they answered, he was like, it's so great to see you guys actually get up there and do it with them. And they said, it's important to us to show all of our cast that, like, this is not dangerous, this is just dance. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because like when you watch it on stage with the lights, with the sound, with the rain, it looks dangerous the way that they are doing this, but in reality it's almost like the craft of slow motion movement and the right like head movement on sound effect that is so effective and so impactful. My actual like biggest note on the cast recording is that this instrumental is not on it, because I wish it was.
So the thing is, there's an instrumental and then there's also noises, but I think it's the cast making those noises. Like,
well, there's a car noise for sure.
No, but I mean like the hitting, the punching, like it's just them making those noises.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how you record that. I mean, I guess you just record it, but that's a hard thing to kind of capture on a cast album, because with just that and without the hitting and the grunting, like, does that instrumental have that same impact in the cast album? I was watching that video earlier today, and Danya Taymor talking about how they choreographed in moments for the cast to check in on each other, make sure they were safe, make sure they were breathing, to make sure that scene would go flawlessly night after night and everyone felt safe completing it, because it's like a long, almost 10-minute sequence that starts as this very like almost realistic rumble with different groups of people fighting each other, and then it kind of transitions into a more impressionistic,
it's
choreographed,
so it's so good
rumble.
Yeah.
That, I mean, to me, that was the highlight of the show, as someone who like loves dance and loves seeing what art you can create with dance and movement. That was my favorite moment of the show, when they transitioned to kind of all, like, every pair was doing the same moves, and then I think it was like Pony Boy up by himself, and he's kind of like punching everyone, and they're all reacting in the same way, and then you see Johnny come out, and in that moment you like so many things are communicating to the audience, like, one of us is no different from the other. If I punch this guy, why is he different from Johnny? Why is he different from me? What is, what are we doing this for? Why, like, who am I to be doing this to this person if we are all, like, we're all the same? I don't know. That's what I'm getting from it. That's my interpretation.
I agree with you. I also, like, not to bring it up, but we can't talk about the Rumble without talking about the other Rumble that we've seen in the rain, and, like...
No, absolutely. Let's go. Let's do it.
That one feels... It's way less choreographed,
so
way more, like,
I'm sure it was
fight.
extremely choreographed, but
it feels less, like, I don't know.
It is meant to look real, I think, anyway, is meant to look more real than this Outsiders Rumble is meant to look.
But then caused injury.
Well, that was too real, I guess. I do think that comes down to a lot of, like, the flooring, and we were in previews and all those things.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because, like, if I'm going to compare both of these back to back, I actually prefer the look of the Outsiders one because I think it's more interesting to watch than just like these guys fighting each other like they do what it seems like in the West Side Story
remember
one.
the tribal masks? Remember the tribal masks?
Oh yeah, I'll never forget. But specifically that moment that you spoke on of like everybody lined up in their pairs. I've never seen anything like that on stage before, and I like think of that stage picture all the time. And then at the end there, when like it becomes kind of chaotic and then there's one final like punch and everybody drops to the ground, it's just like it's really well done. So I don't know that I thought that the Rumble when we saw it for West Side Story was like really cool, but I don't think I thought that it was like amazing.
I felt the one at the West Side Story. This is the Evo Van Hove 2019-2020 production. Please know that no one saw. But we were there. We were there.
And we reference it all the time.
We do because it was kind of formative.
It was formative for my like life.
No, I really feel it was a very formative night. But for me, that one felt very visceral, like visceral to experience. But what I loved about the one in The Outsiders is that it is something so uniquely musical and so uniquely stage that I don't know what other medium could show something like this where you are able to kind of have this expressionistic representation of this Rumble and kind of suspend your disbelief. And, you know, this is like the advantage of it being from Ponyboy's perspective and being from one specific, like being in his mind this whole musical, because when it transitions to kind of being what I would consider like his vision or his interpretation of what's happening or things that are happening around him are starting to blur and change. I think that's the strength of having sat with his kind of sort of corny voiceover for the hour and a half leading up to this to get that moment where you're so used to being in his mind and seeing what he's seeing then.
And then I think another like couple great choreography moments, the Act 1 finale, Run Run Brother, when Ponyboy and Johnny are like running on the wood planks and the ensemble is kind of just like moving those wood planks with them all the time. And then obviously, which I think we can talk about here, the change from the movie to the musical, Dallas's death scene. I think the direction is phenomenal for that scene. The lighting is like next level, but the choreography too, because he is like moving, it's more movement in that sense than like actual like dancing, but the way that he moves from like one place to another until he doesn't move anymore is like really well done. Do you want to talk about the difference?
I will say that song, I know we're not really talking about music, but Little Brother is my favorite song moment in the musical. That's the one that if I am listening, that's the one I would go back to.
Not Soda's Letter? I do like Soda.
No, sorry. It's very sweet, but no. I really, really love Josh Boone's performance in this show. I think he's so great. The difference in the musical, after Johnny has died in the hospital, he runs out onto these train tracks and is hit by a train and dies. Whereas in the book, after Johnny's death, he runs out to a store and robs it and then is running from the police. Once they find him, he intentionally points an unloaded gun at the police, causing them to shoot and kill him. And from what I understand, when they were doing this musical, they changed Dally's death multiple times to try and figure out what was hitting the right tone. Something that they don't really address in this musical at all is like police brutality. And
very different than West Side Story, Evo Van Hove.
West Side Story, the Evo Van Hove West Side Story like went deep on police brutality. I was okay.
With the cameras, we are going in on this.
Yes, we are going in on police brutality. This musical does not, there's a little bit of police, but not in the same,
like
not
right
in
at
the
the
same
top
way.
of Act 2, but that's really it.
Yeah, Bob changing his costume.
Plays the cop.
It's like a small cast.
Actually, wait, before you continue, there's a funny thing. So Emma Pittman in her vlogs was talking about the fact that sometimes when they have like sickness, they don't always have the same number of ensemble members to There's a few girls that fight in the Rumble.
Yes.
They wear like wigs to be the boys, but sometimes when like a boy is out, a girl has to play a whatever role. Anyway, all that to say, in that number when they are all like lined up at the front of the stage and they're trying to like interrogate who, you know, killed Bob now the cop. Emma was saying, so there's a line in the song where she says, like, tell me what's so fun about a fight that's 5-on-2. And when someone is sick and they are, or like multiple people are sick and they can't do it, she's like, tell me what's so fun about a fight that's 4-on-2. She's like, 4-on-2 is not as bad as 5-on-2. So like they changed the lyrics based on like how many ensemble members are sick that day.
Well, that's good. That's good. They're thinking detail oriented.
They're like 4 today, Emma. Don't forget.
I do think like this change, sorry, like to go back to this, but I do think this change allows for a bit more like visual storytelling, and it's again just like a simpler way. I was reminded of, because we'd seen Gatsby and American Myth earlier this year, and kind of Myrtle's death, she's also hit by a moving vehicle, and I found that the way that they staged that to look quite corny.
Actually, in both versions of Gatsby.
Yes, also that, but though I mean that is how Myrtle dies. But I found the specific way that they staged it at Gatsby and American Myth, because it was one I'd seen more recently. I found it a bit like a bit slow, a bit not quite like as impactful as I wanted it to be. Whereas in The Outsiders, I think it might have been lighting or just, I don't know exactly, but his death felt like so much more impactful and a bit more visually stunning, even though it's essentially kind of like the same thing, having him, you know, just center stage with kind of lights behind.
Yeah, it's almost like it's faster, so it feels more impactful. There's also like a filter or something, or maybe it's a projection on the lights, because you do see a bit of like train track movement over his face before it's a full blackout. I also think the sound effects really put that over. Yeah. Maybe in Gatsby they should have used a sound effect.
There was just something off about it that did not
She was like walking so slow.
She was walking so I was like, oh no. Like she really had to sell it, and unfortunately Soleil Pfeiffer, you can sell a lot, but not that. Yeah, I love that moment in the show.
But yeah, I made a joke about Soda's letter, but I actually do want to talk about Jason Schmidt for like second. Because I actually think he's so underused in this musical.
He's so great in this.
The vocals that he gives. He doesn't sing until like halfway through Act 2. And you're just like, why have we saved this voice all the way to here? It's kind of like a tragedy. It's the first time you hear it is in Throwing in the Towel, when Daryl, Soda, and Ponyboy sing. Brent Comer also has a beautiful voice, and specifically like Jason and Brent together sound so beautiful on that song. But I just remember seeing it, and when he started singing, I was like, damn, we've really missed out on like an hour and a half of this guy singing earlier.
A beautiful voice, and I feel also like a scene stealer in the whole show.
Really
so
cute.
But it just, the character of Soda Pop is so funny, so sweet. I think what they're doing by having him not sing is you're supposed to think there's not a lot going on up 100%. In his mind. And then when he finally, like, when it finally comes out, you're supposed to be like, oh, wow. Oh, so sweet. Like, you wait a long time because he's, like, been working up what he needs to say, what he wants to say.
Yeah.
And it's really sweet. No, he's a scene stealer. Every time he comes out, the audience is swooning, they're laughing. He's the comedic relief of the whole show. Love him.
I think he has a band, like, in real life, too.
I do think he is releasing music. I listened to him on the Drama podcast. I've really been making my way through. Like, shout out to Dylan and Connor, who I've talked to about on this show before, because you're providing the content that I'm interested in.
Yes, 100%. The other character that I think we could bump up more here is Cherry. I don't know how much she has. I don't really remember how much she has to do in the movie. I have no idea.
She's off stage a lot.
Is she?
I feel like she's off stage a lot in the show, and in the movie,
she is, again, for sure.
She's a bit of a plot device. Like, you meet her at the drive-in, and then they talk, and then it's kind of the impetus for the Socias to go after Ponyboy and Johnny. But yeah, like, we don't see her again really till the end. Like, we see her briefly before the Rumble, but not really again till the end.
To like.
She goes to the hospital,
right? Yeah. And then she comes in at the very end to drop off Johnny's clothes and the letter that he writes to Johnny. Yeah. I do think Stay Gold is a really beautiful song.
I like that one as well.
Sky Lakota Lynch has a beautiful voice. He's very good in this. Tony nominated, as we know. Yeah, I think that, like, there are so many kind of main/side characters in this show, and everybody has a lot to do. Specifically, like, the boys, for sure, have a lot to do.
That ensemble, working hard.
It's very physical. I remember, like, Louis Peitzman, I believe, tweeted about this when he first saw it and was like... One, he was like, this is going to win the Tony Award for Best Musical. He was, like, obsessed with it when he first saw it. And two, he was like... These boys are literally throwing themselves across the stage every single night.
What is the physical therapy budget for this show?
I was just about to say.
What is the PT room looking like at The Outsiders?
The other
on
thing
staff,
too is
24/7 call.
Because everybody is, like, in those big pivotal moments, like, a lot of these characters are also understudies for, like, the main tracks. So, yeah, it's just interesting to see that, like, at one point, I think, like, I would love to see, like, one of the Socs just, like, swap to be a greaser one night. I think that would be fun. Which I think happens because I know that
all the time.
A few of them have, like, understudied for Daryl and Soda. And, yeah, it's just, I think they have, like, a really strong cast here. So that's why I said, like, kind of at the beginning, it will be interesting to see when there's a cast changeover, if there's a cast changeover happening. Because I wonder what, like, the sustainability is in this show.
No, it's a lot of physicality. And I also want to shout out, actually, speaking of that, what is her name? Tilly Evans Kruger, the one girl on the Greasers. She is dancing.
She is giving it all. They're
is working.
Throwing her from one boy to another.
She is, like, hanging from things. She's one of the dance captains as well, so she's working.
She's like front and center in the Rumble as well.
Yeah.
Something I did want to talk about.
Please.
There are a few shows, and only a few shows on Broadway these days, it seems, that, like, school groups are going to, and this is definitely one of them. The other one I would say is The Great Gatsby, the Broadway Gatsby. I'm trying to think if there's any, maybe, like, Water for Elephants at the time could have been for school groups.
I would have said maybe, like, Suffs.
Yeah, true.
Could be a school group show. It's closed now, but...
But I will say, the first time I saw it, we were sitting with a school group. I want to say they were probably maybe, like, grade 10 or so.
Okay,
grade
like
9
high school?
or so. They were high school for sure. I don't know that there's, like... I mean, I guess if you live in New York, it's different, but I'm not sure that there's, like, elementary out-of-state trips happening. But I could be wrong.
Maybe we're coming from New Jersey. I don't know.
That's true. But this is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of, like, the phenomenon of The Outsiders. To watch these young boys at intermission talk about how much they loved a musical was, like, the greatest thing to me, because they were able to see a show that had characters that were supposed to be their age, even though these boys are definitely not their age, in a book that they've recently read.
Probably read.
And to hear them comment on certain things, like when the Rumble happened, it was, like, audible reactions from these students. And I just, like, cannot stress how exciting that is for what people keep saying is a community that's, like, slowly dying. I just think it's really important to, one, get kids into theaters to see the arts and to support the arts, because you never know, like, a show like this could speak to a kid and be like, oh, I want to do that. I want to be an actor, or I want to be a dancer, or I want to write a play. I want to do something. So I just think that, like, having these field trips happen and for shows to be so accommodating as they are, it was, like, 3 rows full of kids.
Yeah.
It's just, like, so exciting to me for, like, the future of theater.
Even, you know, not necessarily even just, like, I want to be an artist, but, oh, I didn't know musicals could be this. I only thought they were one way, but they can be this. Oh, I want to see more musicals. What else can I see? What else is like this that I would like? And maybe not necessarily creating future artists, but maybe creating future art lovers in the audience there, which is so important.
Yeah, and I just think that, like, you don't see stuff like this that often. I also think that's not probably why that this show won a Tony Award, but as we were talking about the whole way through of, like, it's got the full package. It's kind of like a full package musical here. People are looking for something that checks every box. And I feel like this comes pretty close to checking a lot of those boxes. I also, the first time I saw it in the audience, there was a boy who was in a wheelchair. He was off to the side. He had special needs, and he was obsessed with it. And during the Rumble, when it ended, he was the first one to, like, vocally cheer and, like, raise his arms. And it's just, like, again, as you were saying, like, if a show like this that is so kind of, like, mainstream can make an art lover, like, that's really all I'm asking for at the end of the day here for Broadway. As commercial of musical theater this is, if it brings more people into the theater, I actually don't care.
You need all types of things. You need many different types of things to create the Broadway landscape, to create the theater landscape. Should we just briefly look at what was nominated for Best Musical and then kind of... Yeah. I've got it up in front of me here. So it was Water for Elephants, Suffs, Illinois, Hell's Kitchen, and The Outsiders.
So
what is still running? Hell's Kitchen and The Outsiders.
But even still, so many people said that once Hell's Kitchen transferred from the public, it wasn't as good. Whereas the opposite of, like, once this moved from La Jolla to Broadway, people were like, this is a much better iteration. Which I guess, that makes sense.
It just got better as it got bigger.
I don't know, last year was kind of a weird year.
It was a weird year. I didn't see, the only one of these I've seen at this time is The Outsiders.
I would not have nominated Water for Elephants.
Just generally, I didn't find last year super inspiring in terms of new musicals. So, whereas this year I think is, like, quite inspiring.
It's overloaded.
Yeah, it's a really exciting year, I think, for new musicals. So, yeah, it was a funny year, but that's not to say it's not unearned or unwarranted. But yeah, I definitely do think it was a surprise on the night for Best Musical to go to The Outsiders.
I don't remember who I picked. I definitely picked somebody, but I don't remember who I picked.
I'm sure I've got it somewhere.
We definitely did 2 episodes on this, but I can't remember who I picked.
100%. No, I don't recall at all. Someone tell us.
Okay, should we rate it?
Yes, let's rate it. Okay. I'm going to rate it 7 out of 10 boxes of bleach blonde hair dye.
Oh my god, the wig.
The wig is so bad.
The wig on the wig, it's so bad.
That's actually something to critique about this show, the wig design. Sorry to them.
But kind of like only Ponyboy's wig?
Only Ponyboy's second wig.
Because
I don't know if he's wearing a wig the first time. I think that's just his hair, but that ending.
Oh no, it's definitely a wig. Have you not seen Brody Grant's hair in real life?
That's also a wig? That's a bad wig then. That's hideous. I was like, well, I guess that's just his hair.
That was not Josh Strobel's hair. His was darker,
no, but his hair
actually.
Looks different. Yeah, his hair looked different from what Brody Grant's like ponyboy wig is.
No, that wasn't his hair either. Josh Strobel has like very short hair. It's a wig.
Interesting.
I've seen the wig be put on.
I'm not a fan of the wigs. Okay, go on.
You know whose wig is good though? Cherry's. Good.
That's a beautiful wig. Whose wig I don't really like? Johnny's.
I was going to say the little curls, not really it. It's funny because like so many of the men just have their regular hair in this musical.
Yeah.
But then you've got your main
I think they like want
that have
to like
wigs.
Extend like longer hair for most of them. I don't know.
Not it.
Anyway, go on. Tara, what's your rating?
I'm going to give this 8 out of 10 Soda's Letter. Because
oh wow.
Oh my god, should I do it? Jason Schmidt. Come on. Don't fail me, hearts.
Yes.
That's for YouTube viewers only. No, I really think it's a really fun time. Obviously, for everything that we've said, this show is like at this moment going nowhere. It's doing completely fine. I think it will be a tour dream, and if it ever does come here, I would love to see it again. And
yeah.
I think it's kind of a show for everybody. There's not really like a specific demo for this. I think there's something that everybody could like in this musical, even if you don't like the full thing.
And what I would say is if you're a fan of the book, The Outsiders, I wouldn't hesitate to also recommend it to you. Like if you're already come in as a fan of The Outsiders, I think it really does justice to a lot of what's happening there. Like I don't think you would be offended by choices made in the musical. I think it would just enhance a love of The Outsiders.
And even
which not all adaptations can say.
Yes. And even though we might not have loved the music, we were singing, "This is
Tulsa. We are greasers."
As soon as we walked out of the theater.
We are greasers.
I literally think for the rest of the weekend we were just like, "This is," every single time. It's catchy. It is catchy.
For the past 2 years, we've been like, "We are greasers."
Yeah.
So
it's so true. When we heard it for that very first time, when you were listening and I couldn't hear anything, and maybe we received a fun comment on our Instagram page
from a cast member
that was since deleted because we've since praised the show. But yeah, that is our thoughts on The Outsiders. And now it's time for our obsession of the week.
So on New Year's Eve, the symphony orchestra and friends, I believe it was at the Kennedy Center, Sarah Bareilles and Rufus Wainwright sang "She Used to Be Mine" together. And it is so beautiful and so stunning to hear both of their voices together. It starts with Rufus, and then Sarah comes in and sings, and just two of the most beautiful voices you've heard on one of the most beautiful modern musical theater songs. Talk about a beautiful score, the score of Waitress, a score that I do love to listen sometimes. I do I do enjoy listening to, and I do think is kind of one of the peak accomplishments, let's say, of quote unquote modern musical theater.
Yeah.
And there's not really much to say about it beyond this is just a beautiful rendition of an already stunning song. With a full orchestra backing them. So have to shout out Sarah Bareilles and Rufus Wainwright perform "She Used to Be Mine" next at Kennedy Center. You can find it on YouTube or on TikTok, which is where I first saw it, and listen to it 4 times in a row without scrolling.
Maybe by the time this episode is released, we can't find it on TikTok anymore. We haven't talked about this.
We're from Canada, so I don't even know what's going on.
But will the end of TikTok hurt The Outsiders? I actually
this is a good question.
I don't know. I feel like there's enough
TikTok has formed a lot of community.
It has, but I do think that there's a lot of in-person Outsiders chat as well.
For sure. Everyone's gonna move over to Reddit. Pages. Everyone's moving to Reddit.
We are loyal Reddit users now too.
I'm there.
Toronto Theater. I'm always looking at what's happening there. I'm normally 2 days behind Steph on information, but I'm always there.
Do you ever see my comments?
No.
No. Okay.
I don't really read all the comments. I just read.
I don't read that. I don't comment that often, but sometimes I do.
Wow.
Okay, Tara, what's your obsession this week?
My obsession this week is one that I really had to dig into the archives for, and I forgot that I wrote this down and then never spoke about it. Do we remember when we would always watch on YouTube 54 Below concerts?
Oh, yeah.
I miss those days.
I miss those days. Why don't do an 11 o'clock show again, 54 Below?
Yeah, because we'll go. That's the time. 9:30 is not helpful when you're getting out of a show at 10. It's not right. Anyway, about 6 or so months ago, maybe it was in the summer, but then it was just posted late, 54 Below sang Broadway Loves Sabrina Carpenter. And I feel like I've told you this in person, but I never talked about it on this. But I was obsessed with Nathan Salstone singing Read Your Mind, which if we're going to talk about a Sabrina Carpenter song that is maybe underrated.
That's the one.
It's Read Your Mind. It is so good. And she does not get enough
Pop Perfection
credit for that song.
Pop Perfection.
So good. But I really love this version of the song. It's obviously Ben Ruhala, however you say his name, on the piano, who he is the one that curates these Broadway Loves concerts. But I just feel like we're not getting enough 54 Below content like we used to, and I'm asking for more to come back. I don't know what that means, but let's have more concerts on YouTube, everybody, please.
Jen Ash Tapp, do you still work there? What are you doing? Please. No, I do miss the 11 o'clock shows, because I'm never going to give up a show slot for a 54 Below concert.
Well, also the people that are performing in the shows are going to be in those. Yeah. So it's got to be someone that's not in a show.
And I'm never there on a Monday night because I'm going home. So
I know. Yeah, my campaign is for our actual campaign is for Friday matinees, but our new campaign is for 11 p.m. 54 Below shows.
This is actually back to The Outsiders, but the reason we were able to see The Outsiders on this most recent show is because it was a Thursday matinee and it fit into our schedule really well. We had new other things that we wanted to see, but The Outsiders was on that Thursday matinee. Not that much is running on Thursdays. we got in the night before and we made it work. So
that was new. That was a new edition. It had started in September. We were there in October, but they had said that they were moving to the A Beautiful Noise schedule, which was the Thursday matinee, Sunday for school groups night or something like that. Yeah. You know what? I could see them doing a Friday matinee. I could see it.
They should for like school groups and stuff. It's good. So do an unusual show schedule and more people will have availability to go. It's the way we were able to fit this in and also Oh Mary because they were not at typical show times. Mm-hmm. That's how we got our 8-show weekend. Otherwise, it would have been a 6-show weekend.
Which is, who wants that?
Kooky, crazy.
Yeah. So that's our obsession of the week. That's also our thoughts on The Outsiders. If you want to listen to any of our other episodes, you can do that by subscribing to our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Off2BWay Podcast with the number 2.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.